to I need to record this for somebody. There we go. Okay. I want to apologize for a couple of mistakes on the homework, and I gave everybody 2 bonus points because I made 2 mistakes on the homework. So let's review the homework real quick and open the floor for questions after that. And then we can do the quiz. Let me see. Get this out of here. I have too many windows open. So I know there was a little bit of confusion on the homework. Is this it? Yeah, here it is. Okay. And some of it was because of my errors. Okay, so here's the homework without anything on it. So the first thing I'd like to review is this concept of symmetrical scales, because some of you missed, a lot of you missed stuff at the top. Now, if you gave me a good scale that was usable for this, like a dominant scale, I think I counted off a half instead of a whole point. But if you just missed it completely, then I counted off. But I didn't make a note. So remember symmetrical scales, and maybe you just didn't see it in the instructions here, but symmetrical scales within the interval of an octave. So from this D, from that D to the top to the next D, say all the notes in that scale, the intervals have a symmetry to them. And if I pull over our notes from when we did scales, let me share that with you. Actually, you know what I can do is share. I'll just share everything. Okay. We can see we have some symmetrical scales here, like the whole tone scale used as a dominant mode. So that would have been an acceptable answer for number 1 and number 2, because it's an augmented. So it has the raised fifth, which, so here's the G. The fifth is the diatonic fifth is D natural. So we raise in a whole tone scale, the fifth is raised. So that would have worked for that one. So these are the symmetrical scales we talked about. The whole tone scale, the diminished scale, and then the diminished scale starting at a half step, or the inverted diminished scale. We also talked later on about the augmented scale, which you had to build one of those here. And that also is a symmetrical scale. We kind of build it a little differently. So the answer for a good answer for number 1 would have been either the augmented scale or the inverted diminished scale. So the diminished scale could be a dominant type scale. I'm sorry, the diminished scale is a diminished quality. So that would have been right for number 3. The inverted diminished or half step diminished is a dominant quality right there, right? So that would have been a good answer for number 4 or number 1, or even number 2. You could have gotten away with that. But that's a different issue. We won't talk about that. But, so those are the symmetrical scales. Some of you put like modes, like Mixolydian or that kind of thing. And if you put that on there, I marked half off, because technically you could, but I did ask for a symmetrical scale. So is that clear? Does everybody understand what I mean when I say symmetrical scale now?
Mike, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So what process do you go through, like, to tell which scale it is? Like, how would you go about?
Well, in this case, you have choices because of the quality of the chord. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just look at the quality of the basic chord. So this is a D7. Forget about all the alterations of the extensions for now. This is a D7. So it's some kind of a dominant chord, right? Because we said dominant quality chords have just the letter name and a number next to it, 7, 9, 13, without anything else. No dashes, no minor, no major indication, none of that. So just the letter name, the root letter, and then a number. So this is dominant. So you could choose from any of the dominant scales that we talked about, right? So we have choices in jazz. Like I said, it's kind of a pragmatic music. There are lots of options. You could have chosen. So that's why the Mixolydian works, right? Because it's a dominant scale. The Mixolydian mode is built on the 5th scale degree of a key, major key. So that's the 5 is the dominant chord. So that would have worked, but I asked for symmetrical. So in this case, it narrows down even more. You have to just choose from one of the dominant symmetrical scales. The diminished scale starting on a half step is a dominant scale. The whole tone scale is in the dominant mode. So you could have picked that, even though the 5th is different, it's still a dominant, still has the major 3rd and the minor 7th in it. And then I think also the augmented could have been, no, not really. You could justify it, but so that's, I hope that answers your question. That's how you determine it. I would look at the chord symbol first, the basic chord symbol, and then I choose from my scales that fit in that category. This is dominant, some kind of dominant. This is a diminished chord, fully diminished, so some kind of a diminished scale. Well, we only have one really, right?
Okay, so the accidentals, like, they don't have anything to do with it.
Well, they can help us qualify or get a little, hone in a little closer. So I can choose from any dominant scale for this, but what is, maybe there's a better, maybe there's a choice that's better than the others. So what scale, what dominant scale? So first thing, choose from my dominant scales. What dominant scales do I have that have a flat 9 and a sharp 11 in them? Well, here's the diminished whole tone, or sorry, the inverted diminished scale has a flat 9 in it. This is 2 different keys, but there's the flat 9. So in A, there's the flat 9, the B flat. It also has a sharp 11. So there's the sharp 11 in G. There's the sharp 11 in A. So that inverted diminished would be a good choice because it contains both of the altered extensions, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might be the best choice. The other choices aren't wrong. So if you had any kind of dominant quality symmetrical scale for an answer, you got full credit. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And this is, I know this isn't like making music. It isn't very artistic. It's kind of mathematical. Like you just have to analyze the material that you have and find the best fit. I will say that when I'm improvising, if I see this chord, there are lots of different, it depends on my mood. Am I feeling adventurous? Then I might use this because it has a lot of crazy notes in it. If I'm feeling a little more melancholy, I might just use a dominant scale because it's a little plainer, that kind of thing. So you have to make some choices. Okay, the other thing.
Quick question on that.
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking about like finding which notes match up with the chord and the scale,
mm-hmm.
How are you doing that? Like maybe you just know all of the notes that should be there.
Yeah, I know them at this point, but you've taken these notes and written down these scales, and I know we've only done them in one key, right? We kind of stuck to the key of C major for most, or C minor for most of these. However, this is and that's like step one, and then you've got to learn these in all of your keys. It would help to, if you see this dominant, write out your dominant scales in A, so you have them as a reference before you pick.
Okay.
Yeah. And then A. So here's a question for the class, because this is a question you asked me over the weekend, Satya. What major key would this A7 belong to?
Is it D?
Yeah, it's D, because the dominant 7, or just the letter, the root letter with the number next to it, the dominant 7 is a 5 chord. Dominant 7s are 5 chords. So that means they're built on the 5th scale degree of a major key or a minor key. So A is the 5th scale degree of D. So this belongs to the key of D. That's the dominant chord in the key of D, the dominant 7 chord. And that's something important too, Satya, to help clarify your answer a little more. Like, we have to know when we built these chords on the scale degrees, and that was on another sheet that I have notes. But when we first built these our 7th chords, we laid them out built on a major scale, right? So we had a 1 chord, a 2 chord, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7. So knowing where these belong, like where does a diminished chord belong? Well, it's the 7th chord of a minor key of a minor scale, right? So that belongs to A flat minor, because G is the 7th of A flat minor. A flat natural. I'm sorry. A minor. No, A flat minor. A flat harmonic minor, right? So it belongs to that. Sorry about that. Got confused for a second. Yeah, so those, and then this augmented is just an alteration, but we know it's a dominant quality based on the notes that we took. And the fact that it has a major third and a minor 7th. Major third and minor 7th always indicates a dominant quality. So we can assume that's a 5 chord, just with a little alteration to it. All right, this one, most of you guys got. The inverted diminished, most of you got. The super Locrian. So this one, actually, everybody did great on that, and that's one I thought maybe you'd have the most trouble with. It turned out these were more confusing because I gave you the wrong starting note, but that was good. Anybody have a question about the super Locrian? I think everybody got that one. E flat augmented, I gave everybody a bonus point for that. If you missed it, I still marked it so that you would know, what the notes were, but I didn't, and I might have counted it off, but I compensated for it when I added the bonus points. And then this was a little confusing because I didn't give you the right starting note. Plus there's a dash right here, and that shouldn't have been there. So it kind of looks like C minor sharp. I don't know why. That was just a mistake. So the Lydian mode, let's talk about the Lydian mode, because a lot of people miss this one regardless of the first note. So which mode of the major scale is the Lydian? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Anyone?
Fourth.
Yeah, it's the 4th mode. So the way to figure out which major scale notes you would use, or which major scale you would use for the source material for this mode, is to figure out C sharp is the 4th of what key. A lot of you did this backwards, where you did C sharp as the 5th. So maybe you went a 4th the wrong direction, because I got all the notes of the F sharp major scale. A few of you did that. So C sharp this was a tricky one. C sharp is the 4th of G sharp. So you would have used the notes from the G sharp major scale, which is a scale we don't use a lot. So you could think of it as A flat major. So you could have written flats. Some of you did that. Some of you actually mixed them up, sharps and flats, and I just, if they were the right pitches, I counted it. So this one was a little bit of a maybe it wasn't a fair fight, but that was a little tricky one. I just wanted you to start, to try to think enharmonically there to make a choice. So C sharp is the 4th of G sharp. G sharp's not really a key that we use a lot. So you could change it to A flat, and that would have been fine. So it would have been C sharp up to C sharp with all the notes of the A flat or G sharp major scale in between. Yeah, Satya?
And then because a Lydian has a raised 4th, so you would raise the 4th from the C, or
from the C
4th in the G sharp?
No, from the C sharp. So if you're going to do it that way, so another way to think of the Lydian mode is it's a major scale with a raised 4th. That's what Satya is asking. So this
just a major scale from C.
From C sharp, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. A major scale from C sharp with a raised 4th, not with a natural 4, not with a perfect 4th, with an augmented 4th in it. That's another way to think of it. And that can be helpful, but I think it's important to know what key does the Lydian mode belong to? I think that's ultimately that's the more effective way to learn this. Yeah. Then you don't have to. Then you don't have to worry about what is the fourth and what is it when I raise it. You just know that if I know all my major scales, I know all my Lydian modes. Right? I just start on the fourth of that major scale. Yeah.
What about the minor bit? Was that supposed to be in there? Or?
That dash? No, I said that was a mistake. That was.
Okay,
I think what I did originally is I wrote like up here E-flat, and I probably wrote C-sharp, and then later I changed it to just the sharp symbol because I figured out how to do it. And then I forgot to take the dash out, so that was a mistake. So like I said, I didn't really count off for these two because of my mistakes, but I did mark it if you got it wrong, and then I compensated with the bonus points at the top. The rest of it was good. This was one that some of you missed. This one I think everybody got that. Dominant. So this is the inverted diminished scale. So that goes with the dominant family of chords. This one is a minor. So this one was a minor pentatonic. We only spent just a couple minutes on the pentatonics. Remember, the major pentatonic goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and the minor goes 1, flat 3, 4, 5, minor 7. So this is the minor pentatonic, very clearly. D, F natural, minor third, A. That's a minor triad. Right away, we know it's a minor quality, even without going to the seventh. But the seventh happens to be minor also. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So the way to go about like doing these problems is to just look at the you have to like look at the intervals and see which scale matches up with those intervals.
With the scales, you mean? With this, like on number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say, figure out first of all, figure out what the scale is. This is a inverted diminished scale because the intervals are half step, whole, half. Looks weird, but it's a whole step, right? E flat to F is a whole step, half, whole. So it's half whole, half whole, half whole, all the way up. We only have one scale that has those intervals. It's the inverted diminished over here, or diminished scale starting on a half step. And we know that's a dominant type scale. So that belongs to the dominant family of chords.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. And then the same thing here. Figure out what the scale is. 1, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 7. That's a minor pentatonic. That belongs to the minor quality, minor family of chords. Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, go ahead and take the quiz. This time, just for time's sake, let's go till 10 o'clock. I'm going to stop you at 10 o'clock. And if you need to finish it later, you can do that. Because we've got a little bit. I think we might get out a little bit early today. I don't have quite as much material, but this material today is arguably the most important material we're going to cover in the whole class. So I want to make sure you all understand it. But there you go. So let's go ahead. You know what I didn't? Let me look at the quiz. See if there are any of my mistakes on this one. I didn't look at it because some of you may have already done the quiz, and I didn't want to have some of you working from a good copy and some not. So everybody's going to work from the same copy. Yeah, this all looks fine.
For the first question on it,
yeah.
How many scales do you want us to name? Like all that we can think of, or?
Yeah, you can. I know I put it in parentheses S. I'm only requiring 1. If you put a couple extra, that's fine. There are no bonus points for it, but it kind of helps you kind of make those connections. So just 1 is fine. Now I will say this on number 3, the second scale. That's weird. I got 1, 3, 3. Sorry about that. Anyway, at the bottom, what family of chords go with the following scales? The second one on that, ignore that. We didn't get to that one. I will introduce that at some point. It's another type of scale. We'll probably yeah. I'll just
the second part of 3.
Yeah, the second part of number 3. What family of chords goes with the following scales? That one doesn't count. I'll just give that as a bonus point to everybody because I didn't get to that one. We just ran out of time. So, okay. All right. Okay, go ahead. About 3 more minutes. All right, let's come on back, and you can, if you're not finished with your quiz, you can finish it later, and then we'll turn it in later on today, and I'll get them graded this afternoon. Is everybody back? Let me see. Adam, are you at the pool or something?
I'm on the deck. Yeah.
Oh man, that's not fair when it's like 35 degrees in Colorado Springs. All right, is everybody back? I think we've got, looks like we got everybody. Hey, let me share this with you. I'm gonna the quiz. There were only a few of you that finished it and turned it in, or that I received so far. Maybe more of you did. It just hasn't refreshed yet. So here's the quiz. So I know I didn't give you, I think I may have mentioned a related scale to the last one that I didn't count. I gave everybody a bonus for that just because we didn't cover it. But just to illustrate what we were talking about before, let me ask the question here. So if I know that a major quality scale is going to have a major third and a major seventh in it, a dominant scale is going to have a major third and a minor seventh, and a minor quality scale is going to have a minor seven and a minor third, or a major third. But I'm sorry, a minor third and a major or minor seventh. So that minor third is important for the minors. Knowing that information, we can deduce what this scale, what family the scale goes with, what family of chords. So who cares to take a guess at what family of chords, just using that little bit of knowledge without even knowing what the scale is called?
Is it major?
Yeah, it's major because, so I know it's descending, so this was a little tricky, but if we go up, C is the root. The third is major, E, so that's 4 half steps above the root. The seventh is a major seventh. Geez, what did I do there? So 11 half steps above the root, or thinking backwards, we can think 1 half step below the root. C down to B is 1. So it says a major third and a major seventh. That makes it a major quality scale. It goes with the major family of chords. Okay. So you don't need to know what a scale is called to figure out if you can use it over a set of chords as source material or not. In this case, you can use this over major 7 chords. This scale happens to be called the major bebop scale. And I think we talked about the dominant bebop scale just briefly a few days ago. So this is in the same category. We're not going to worry about that too much. It's mostly used for improvising, not as much for writing or arranging. So probably not as important for our purposes. This is not an improvisation course, but okay. Any other questions on lesson 4? I know lesson 4 had a lot of material that you just had to memorize, so you just have to know, right? Okay. Before we go any further, let's I said we'd do a little tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. today. So Martin Luther King Jr. was a huge advocate of jazz. Let me share my audio with you before we go. Anybody know how to share audio? Everybody has a different version of this, so I've done it before.
There in the bottom left, there should be 2 checkboxes, and one of them is the option to share audio, to share sound.
Yeah, mine doesn't have that. My version I think is a little bit different. But let me see. I've done this before with another class, and now it's just the knowledge has left me. And I think they even updated the version I'm using. It's the and because this doesn't look familiar. Sorry, everyone. Give me a second here. Bear with me. Well, this is pretty frustrating. Maybe we can't do this. I seem to have lost my ability to share audio. It's nowhere to be found. One more place here. There it goes. All right, I found it. Okay, here we go. Share sound. So let me also. Can everybody see my screen or not? It doesn't seem to. This is really frustrating. Looks like I can only share one thing at a time. So I'm going to share my audio only. Okay, so this is Martin Luther King Jr. was a huge advocate of jazz. And here's a little essay that he wrote about jazz. It's just a couple minutes long. Maybe some of you have heard this before. This is not his voice. It's several celebrity voices.
God has wrought many things out of oppression.
He has endowed his creatures with the capacity to create.
And from this capacity has flowed the sweet songs of sorrow and joy that have allowed man to cope with his environment and many different situations.
Jazz speaks for life.
The blues tell the story of life's difficulties.
And if you think for a moment, you will realize that they take the hardest realities of life and put them into music,
only to come out with some new hope or sense of triumph.
This is triumphant music.
This is triumphant music.
This is triumphant music.
Modern jazz has continued in this tradition,
singing the songs of a more complicated urban existence.
When life itself offers no order and meaning,
the musician creates an order and meaning from the sounds of the earth which flow through his instrument.
It is no wonder that so much of the search for identity among American Negroes was championed by jazz musicians.
Long before the modern essayists and scholars wrote of racial identity as a problem for a multiracial world,
musicians were returning to their roots to affirm that which was stirring within their souls.
Much of the power of our freedom movement in the United States has come from this music.
It has strengthened us with its sweet rhythms when courage began to fail.
It has calmed us with its rich harmonies when spirits were down.
And now, jazz is exported to the world.
For in the particular struggle of the Negro in America, there is something akin to the universal struggle of modern man.
Everybody has the blues.
Everybody longs for meaning.
Everybody needs to love and be loved.
Everybody needs to clap hands and be happy.
Everybody longs for faith.
In music, especially this broad category called jazz, there is a stepping stone towards all of these.
All right, there you go. Some great words and a lot of, we've made progress in our country. We have a long ways to go. So it's just as relevant today as it was 50 years ago. All right, I guess it's been 40 years ago now, huh? 40? Yeah, in the 60s. That's amazing. Time flies. All right. So let's continue on our exploration of jazz here with a little bit of some new material. And I said this is going to be a really important lesson. This is getting into the fundamental harmonic foundation for jazz. So we're going to introduce today a chord progression that occurs in virtually, I can't say every jazz song. The vast majority, I would say 90% of jazz music has this chord progression in it somewhere. And it is called the 2-5-1 progression. So who has heard of that? Anybody heard of the 2-5-1 progression? Know what that means? Or at least have heard those terms. We're going to do it like this. I'm going to build again some scales. So we'll start with the major scale. Okay, 2-5-1 progressions. And I need to add some measures here. Okay, so our major C major scale, we'll use C again just because it's not cluttered with a bunch of accidentals. And again, if I build 7 chords on these, and please build these along with me on your staff paper if you've got that handy. Okay, and then we repeat with the 1 chord. All right, and we called these when we did Roman numerals, we called this a 1 major 7, a 2 minor 7. Oops, I forgot I can't do that. A 2 minor 7, a 3 minor 7, 4 major, a 5-7, 6 minor 7, and a 7 half diminished. We'll just call it minor 7 flat 5. That's a lot. Okay. Oops, I'm pretty excited about the 1 chord apparently. That's a 1 major 7. Okay. This is called a 2-5 progression. So when we have a 2-5 progression, what we're doing, we had talked about the power of the dominant chord and how it really helps us establish a key center, right? A tonal center by the power of the resolutions that occur between the 5 chord and the 1 chord. We can see, I'm going to invert it there so we can see it better. We can see the half step movement that we have. The F of the 5 chord wants to resolve down. Just a reminder, just a review. The 3rd of the 5 chord wants to resolve up to the root of the 1 chord. That's also doubled, so that's smooth. The G is the 5th of the, the 1 of the 5 chord is the same as the 5th of the 1 chord. So a lot of things that are really close together. So it really is a powerful movement from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. The 2, when we add the 2 chord in front of the 5 chord, we just get more close movement. So let me add a measure here real quick. This is just to illustrate. We'll show some examples in just a minute. Oh, I don't want to add. Okay. All right. I'm going to invert it again so we can see how close things are. The D and the F are the same. The C of the 2 chord wants to go down. It's a half step away from the 3rd of the 5 chord. So again, very close relationship to the 5 chord. So there's the 2, the 5, the 1. Now here's another interesting thing. If we look at our circle of fifths, I'm just going to share the whole screen. That'll be easier. Okay, here's the circle of fifths. We've got our 2 chord is a D chord. There's the D in the circle of fifths. Our 5 chord in the key of C is a G chord. There's the G in the circle of fifths. And our 1 chord is a C. So we've got, here we establish we've got a 2 to 5. And most of the time it occurs as a 1 chord after that. So we could say 2-5-1. However, the 2-5 will be isolated sometimes. So I just want to show you how this works with the circle of fifths. Look at the movement here. D is the 2, G is the 5, C is the 1. D, G, C. Remember I talked about when I introduced the circle of fifths, how in jazz we tend to use it counterclockwise? Here's the first real example of that we see. This fundamental chord progression, the 2-5 progression, it shows up in the circle of fifths going counterclockwise. 2-5-1 in the key of C, D, G, C. 2-5-1 in the key of D. I'm going to go 2 to the left or 2 to the right and then go backwards. E, A, D. That's the 2-5-1 in the key of D. This is just root movement only. Okay. Make sure you understand that. Let's go over here. In the key of B flat, the 2-5-1, I got to go backwards 2 and then go C, F, B flat. There's the 2-5-1, all 3 chords in the key of B flat. So that's kind of how you can find it on the circle of fifths. Another useful thing another thing that's we can use the circle of fifths for is to find our 2-5-1, at least the root movement. Okay, let's look at the quality of the 2-5-1 here in the key of C. And it's illustrated here with the Roman numerals. So this is in a major, I should make that distinction, in a major key based on the chords, the diatonic chords of a major scale. The 2-5-1 is a minor 7 followed by a dominant 7, the 5 chord. Okay, so 2-5, minor 7 followed by a dominant 7, and the roots are a fourth apart. So D to G. So if we know all of our basic 7 chords, diatonic 7 chords, we could, when we're looking at a piece of music, we should be able to identify a 2-5 that's kind of injected somewhere in the song. And we're going to look at a couple of examples today in just a minute. But before we do that, let's as a class build a couple of 2-5s, and then we'll talk about, or then we'll look at some examples. Okay, so I'm going to give you a key signature, a key center, and I'll do a key signature as well. We're going to leave out the 1 chord for now, although we can, well, yeah, I guess we can add it in. That's fine. So here's the key signature. Let's go with F major. So we're in F major. Who wants to take a crack at the 2 chord in F major? What is it? Let's find the root first.
G minor.
Yeah, it's G minor. Good. G, B flat, D, F. I can add the accidental just to make it more clear. But it's in the key signature. Okay, what about the 5 chord? What's the 5 chord of F?
Dominant.
What was that?
C dominant.
C dominant 7. So C7. So those are the 2 chords. The chord symbols.
Mike, can you make that screen a bit bigger?
Yeah, sorry about that. Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
Except for all the extra useless measures here. Yeah, so there's the 2. So when we see this chord progression, G minor 7 to C7 in a song, we can say, oh, that's in this little section right here is probably in some kind of F. It's either F major or F minor. We just see the root movement G to C and a minor 7 to a dominant 7. So the 1 chord following this, if we were going to see this, if there was a 1 chord, it's pretty obvious, but it would be F major 7, right? Because we're in that, that's the tonality we're looking for. So that chord would look like that. So this would be a 2-5-1 in F major. And this can occur in a song that's in F, or it can occur in a song that's in a different key. We could just change to F major for a couple bars. Yeah, that happens a lot. We're going to see that. So there you go. G, C, F. 2 in the key of F. So if we see a minor 7 chord, the first thing we should be thinking is that a 2 chord? Yeah. I mean, it could be a 3 or a 6, but more than likely it's some kind of a 2. Is it a 2 chord? Well, one additional clue is there a dominant 7 a fourth away that follows it? Is that a 5 chord? And then what comes after that? Is that some kind of an F? Then yeah, it's a 2-5-1 if those things occur. It doesn't always have to be an F after that. We'll see that later. But most of the time when we see this cycle, we'll see G, C, F, just like on the circle of fifths. Okay. So that's a major 2-5 progression. Any questions about the major 2-5 progression? I know it's didn't take long, but that's a really important chord progression. And I'm just going to open up the fake book in a minute, or I'm just going to pull up some random tunes and we'll see how easy it is to find 2-5-1s. Any questions about the major and the quality of that? And of course, now remember, the quality of the chord is determined by the 3rd and the 7th, right? So I can have a bunch of extra stuff up here. Crap. Got rid of my. So I can have all these extra notes up here. But as long as I have at the bottom of it a major 3rd above the root and a minor 7th above the root, it's still a dominant quality. That still counts as a 5 chord. Okay. The other ones, the extra notes that are changed, the alterations, the altered extensions are just color, just different colors of a dominant quality. Okay. Cool with that? Let's do minor 2-5s because these are a little bit different. And then there is one alternative that we have to those. So minor keys. And for this, I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just going to do natural minor just so we can stay diatonic. Actually, let's do A natural minor. Don't have to worry about too many flats. Okay. Okay. So the same thing. I'm going to build these diatonic 7 chords. I'll take this all down an octave in a second. I'm realizing we're getting pretty high. There we go. All right. So let's build these now. Remember, this is our A minor key. So no sharps, no flats. It's relative, the relative minor for C, built on the 6th scale degree of the C major scale. It's relative minor or aeolian. We learned that when we did our modes. And one of the things we talked about is that in order to have a functional scale, we have to make the fifth chord a dominant chord, right? So it has to have a major third. So we add a leading tone here. We make the third of the 5 chord to up a half step and make it a G sharp. And we do the same thing with this leading tone on the 7th chord. Everybody remember that when we built that, the natural minor scale? Okay, and then the chords are the qualities. One minor 7, 2. We're going to call this minor 7 flat 5, but it's a half diminished also. We'll do that with a chord symbol. The 3 was a major 7. The 4 was a minor 7. And then 5, because of the alteration we made, it's a dominant 7. The 6 is a major 7. And the 7 is a diminished 7. Okay? Remember that? So let me put the chord symbols up here because it'll be helpful when we talk about the 2 chord. Oops. What am I doing? There we go. I'm just going to do the 2, 5, and the 1. Okay, so here are the minor keys, the minor 2, 5, 1. So in a minor key, we can tell we're going to be in a minor key right away when we start to identify a 2, 5 and minor, because we see that the 2 chord will be a half diminished instead of a minor 7 like we had up in the major category. Okay. So a 2 chord in a minor key is half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. The 5 chord, however, is still dominant. All right, so this 2, 5 is this. Put this double bar here. There's the 2, 5, and then the 1 we can put next to that just to finish it off. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is what a 2, 5 looks like in a minor key: a half diminished 7, and then a dominant 7, a fourth away. And then if we finish it off with another 1 at the end, we'll get a minor 7, a fourth away from that. So in the key of A minor, B half diminished, E7, A minor 7. Does that make sense to everyone? Let's build that real quickly in a different key, and then I'll talk about an exception to this that we'll find sometimes. So let's do the key of, let's see, let's do a sharp key. How about B minor? So the key of B minor, what is the 2 chord in B minor?
C sharp minor.
C sharp minor, yeah. So C sharp is the 2nd scale degree in the B minor scale. Use accidentals just for clarity. So it's actually not C sharp minor. It's C sharp half diminished. Sorry about that. I led you astray there. C sharp half diminished 7. Remember, so the 2 chord in a minor key is just diatonically, it's a half diminished. So it's got a minor third above the root, minor third above root. C sharp to E is 3 half steps. It's got a diminished 5th. So it makes it a diminished quality of some kind. We won't know yet till we get to the 7th, but it's a diminished. So it perfect 5th above C sharp would be G sharp. If we lower a perfect interval by a half step, we get a diminished interval. So it's G natural above C sharp's diminished 5th. And then it has a minor 7th, or 10 half steps above the root, or 2 half steps below the root. It's maybe an easier way to think of it. So we have the diminished triad with a minor 7th on top. It's half diminished 7. So when we see a half diminished 7, a C sharp half diminished 7 chord, it should be a clue. We're possibly approaching a tonal center of B minor at this point in the song. Okay? What about the 5 chord in B minor?
F sharp.
F sharp. What? That's the 5. What is the quality of the
major?
F sharp dominant? Close. Yeah. F sharp dominant 7, or F sharp 7, we just call it. There we go. F sharp 7. And remember, we need to have a 5 chord that is dominant when we're establishing a tonal center, right? So even though the key doesn't have an F sharp in it, we still have to pull one in when we get to a 5 chord to make it a major third above the root, so we can have a dominant quality, major third, minor 7th above the root. So this is where minor 2/5s get a little tricky, because it may be a 2/5 in a minor key, but we still have to pull in a note from outside that key to make the 5 chord a dominant. So this is what and then the 1 chord, it helps to see that. And I'll put this in an inversion so we can see that resolution one more time. What did I just do? There we go. Nope. Don't want that sharp there. There we go. Okay, so we can see the resolutions that occur. This C sharp likes to move up to that D, the 5th of, this. There we go. So the 5th of the C sharp, of the F sharp of the 5 chord, likes to move up to the 3rd of the 1 chord following it, the D natural. The 3rd of the 5 chord, the A sharp, likes to move down to the 7th of the 1 chord, half step away. This F sharp is the same. It's common to both chords. And then the E can move down to the D, or the C sharp can move up to the D also. So there's the strong resolution. The reason we have that major third, so we have that leading tone from the 3rd of the 5 chord to the 1 of the 1 chord. So that's a 2/5-1 in a minor key. And again, the tricky spot of this is remembering that we need to pull in that accidental on the 5 chord to make it dominant. So when we see a half diminished 7, our radar should go up. There's a good possibility we're approaching a 2/5 in a minor tonality. Is there a 5 chord following it, and is it a 4th away? Yep, there it is. It's a 2/5 in a minor key, whether or not we go to the 1 or not. Sometimes it doesn't go there, but most of the time you'll see it like that, all 3 chords together, 2/5-1. Okay, any questions about that before I talk about an exception to this rule? It's really more of an alteration that we make. And again, the same thing can occur on the dominant chords. I can put any extension up here I want, right? I can put sharp 9, flat 13, flat 9, sharp 11, any of those, as long as it has a dominant quality on the bottom, major third, and a minor seventh above the root. It's still a 5 chord, a dominant 7 chord. Okay. Here's the exception that occurs. Let me just copy these measures. In a minor key. In a minor 2-5, we talked about this briefly. Sometimes the quality can be augmented of the 5 chord. Okay. So this is F sharp. The D is a augmented 5th above the root, and technically it should be a C double sharp. But remember, we don't like to look at double sharps. So a C double sharp is enharmonic to D natural. So we're just going to label it a D so it's easier to look at. So this is an augmented 7th chord with the 5th raised. It doesn't change the quality of the chord. Remember, it's still a dominant because we still have a major 3rd and a minor 7th above the root. We've just altered the 5th a little bit. So it's still a dominant quality chord. And the reason that a lot of jazz players use this as an alternative to just a standard run-of-the-mill dominant 7 chord is because we have this common tone between the 5 and the 1. So we have a D natural in the 5 chord. We have a D natural in the 1 minor chord. And that just makes for a little more homogeneous resolution. It doesn't move as much, but it really helps. It kind of establishes the minor tonality a little bit sooner, maybe 1 chord sooner. So let me play both. I'm going to play on the piano. I'll play this 2-5. Actually, I'll just do the 5 because the 2 is the same. So I want you to really focus in on hearing the difference between the dominant 7 moving to a minor 1 and the augmented 7 moving to a minor 1. So here's the F sharp 7 moving to B minor. Again. Now here's the F sharp augmented. Oh, sorry. Let me do back to back. F sharp 7 to B minor, F sharp augmented to B minor. So not a ton of difference. We can still hear that we still have that dominant quality movement. Just a little bit of a different choice, a little different color on the dominant, on the augmented. But that does happen a lot. This is much more common in jazz to see in a minor 2-5, an augmented 7 than this is. And it's because of that. This will occur. You'll still find it. So the clue that you're in a minor 2-5, the first clue should be a half diminished 7. Okay, the half diminished 7, 99 times out of 100, that's going to indicate we're approaching a minor 2-5 progression. And then if we have this augmented, that just further solidifies it. Oh, definitely minor. Okay, now here's a side note. Everybody understand that before I give you a side note? Everybody understand that? Why we do that? Okay, here's the side note. And I told this, I think I told Satya this over the weekend when we got together. From an improvising standpoint, a lot of jazz improvisers, a lot of more advanced improvisers will just use an augmented 7 whenever the heck they want to. Okay, so I do this a lot. I just like the sound. I will use it in a major 2/5 as an improviser. Now, I won't normally write it, if I'm writing it, because it's confusing to other players around me. But if I'll just, if the piano player and bass player are playing a 5 chord, I might just use the augmented 7 as an improviser just to provide a little crunch against that. And I just like the way those two sound together. So it's just kind of in performance practice, improvisers will use this. It's just kind of a wild card over any 5 chord. They'll use that quality, just superimpose it over top of what everyone else is doing. That's just performance practice. I just want you to know that sometimes you might, as you practice this material, as you get more familiar with jazz and what's going on from a theory standpoint, you might encounter that an augmented 7th over a major 2/5. That's usually what's going on, just the improviser's choice. But for our purposes, this 2/5 in a minor works, and this 2/5 in a minor works. So you have 2 options. Okay. Any questions about the minor 2/5? We're going to look at some examples on some tunes here. Okay. Let me pull this up. What time is it? 10:30. Doing great. So as I said, we're probably going to be done early today, but I do want to, don't get too excited to go like right away, because I do want to, I have the final uploaded to the assignments, and I want to review that with you, make sure you see it. Okay, here's a tune called Autumn Leaves. Let's find the 2/5s. First of all, let's establish the key signature. Anybody care to take a crack at the key of this song?
B flat.
G minor.
I heard a B flat, and then what did I hear?
G minor.
G minor, B flat, and G minor. So B flat and G minor are relative to each other, right? G minor is the relative major of B flat. It's the 6th of the B flat major scale. So it could be in either. I think G minor is the correct choice. This one's tricky because the first chord progression we see is what? 2/5 in the key of B flat. So if I have my B flat major scale, the second scale degree is C. Now this is interesting. This doesn't have a 7 on it, but we're in jazz, so we're just going to add a 7. We're going to assume a 7. Not sure why that got left off of this one. This is from a collection of play-alongs called Jamie Aebersold play-alongs. Anybody heard of that? Some of you probably seen those. Yeah, so it's a 2 in the key of B flat. It's a minor quality. 7, we're going to assume a 7th. And then we can also look ahead. And then it's followed by a dominant, a 4th away, which happens to be the 5th of B flat. So it looks like we're going to be in B flat major, but then it changes really quickly later on over here. And also another clue for figuring out the key of the song. This is just another side note, is look at the last chord. The first chord is not always reliable in jazz. In most simpler music, pop music, country music, the 1 chord is more times than not the first chord. But in jazz, it's not always, so you can't rely on that. Got to look at the last one too. Look at the last couple of chords, and we've got a 2/5-1 to get us home at the end of the song. 2/5-1 in G minor, A half diminished, and then D7 is the 5/7 augmented. Now that's another way to write augmented. Remember I said you might see it with a D7 with a plus afterwards. So there you go. And then this has a 9. So that also means sharp 9. And then the 1, G minor. So this is definitely in G minors, but we do have a 2/5-1 here in B flat. So for this first couple bars, we're in B flat major. We can just say we're in B flat major. And it kind of looks like that. Like we've got the melody really, it lands on the 3rd of B flat major here. So that's a really strong chord tone to help us establish a major tonality, the major 3rd. So yeah, this first couple bars is in B flat major, but it really quickly transitions to G minor. Okay, so here's the 2/5 in B flat, and then Where then this, what is this progression here? We've already talked about it at the end of the song. It's a 2-5 in
G minor.
G minor. First clue, half diminished. Yeah, it's probably a 2 chord in a minor key coming up. And sure enough, we've got a 5 chord, a 4th away, immediately following it. And then that one just happens to go to a 1 minor chord, a 4th away, a minor chord, a 4th away from this. So there's the A, D, G around the circle of fifths in counterclockwise motion. There's a 2-5 in minor. All right, let me pull up another one. I'm going to do, this will be a good one. Where'd my folder go? Oh, looks like I got closed. I got to open it again. Oh, there it is. Okay. I wanted to show you this. Here we go. All right. Here's a song called Giant Steps by John Coltrane. And we'll talk about this song later on when we talk about common chord progressions. This one being a not common chord progression, but we'll talk about it anyway because it's important in the history of jazz. Okay, so this one, who can find a 2-5-1 in E flat major for this, in this song for me? Call out the measure number.
Four.
Well, that's a 2-5-1 in G major, because we've got a minor chord, minor 7 chord. I guess Jamie Ebersole doesn't like to put 7s on his minors, but we're going to assume there's a 7 there. A minor 7 chord or a minor chord, followed by a dominant chord, a 4th away, and then this one happens to go to G, right? So that's a 2-5-1 in G. What about in E flat? You have to think about what's the second scale degree of E flat?
Measures 8 and 9.
Yeah, exactly. Measure 8 and 9. So the 2 of E flat is F minor. So when we see a minor chord, we've got to be thinking, is this going to be a 2? Well, what's the next chord? Is it a 4th? Is it a dominant 7, a 4th away? Yep. F, G, A, B flat. It's a 4th away. So perfect 4th. So and it's dominant. So this is a 2-5, and then it happens to land on E flat to really hammer it home for us. 2-5-1. All right, and then we've got another one here. There's a 2. There's a minor. Is it a 2 chord? C sharp. What's the 4th away from C sharp? F sharp. Dominant. 2-5. 2-5, and this one hammers it home again by going to the 1 chord. C sharp, F sharp, B is 2-5-1 in the key of B. Everybody getting to how we're finding these so far? Let me open up a random one that I haven't planned for, and we'll see what we find. Here we go. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Sammy Nestico, one of the great big band writers of all time, wrote for Count Basie's band for decades, just passed away yesterday. He was like 96 years old, I think. So Sammy Nestico wrote a lot of great big band music. One of the all-time greats. Let's just find a tune here. Here, this is the first tune. It's called, oh, it's the second tune, I guess. Oh, it's the first tune. 88 Basie Street. Can I get that? Let me make it bigger for you. There we go. All right. Who can find a 2-5 in this? Is there one in here? I might have shot myself in the foot. There is sort of a 2-5. This one isn't fair. Wait a minute. Maybe it is. No, this one isn't fair because it has an alteration of a 2-5 that we'll talk about when we do some common chord progressions. So let me pick a different tune here. It does have a 2-5 right here, but it's not a fair fight because this B flat is is an alternate chord for the E chord, but we'll skip that one. Here we go. This one has a ton of them, and most of them are in the same key. Switch in time. Who can find a 2-5 here? This one's pretty easy, although it doesn't go to the 1 chord.
Measure 6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
measure 6 has it. I guess up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the same measure. Yeah, there's a minor 7 chord. Radar should go up. Is this a 2? Is there a dominant that happens a fourth away right after it? Yep. In this case, it doesn't go to a 1, but it still has a 2-5 right here, right? Remember I said a lot of times it'll go to a 1 after. Sometimes it won't. 2-5. We can see the first 4 bars. We have a 2-5 in the key of, what is this, a 2-5? There's F minor 7 to B flat 7, minor 7 to a dominant 7, a fourth away. What key is that measure?
E flat.
E flat. Yep. And it just toggles.
Should we generally look for a minor, like, is that kind of a minor 7? Is that kind of like a sign, or like?
Yeah. Remember I've been saying my radar should go up. There's a minor 7. Am I approaching a 2-5? Is there a dominant chord right after it that's a fourth away? Then yep, that's exactly right. Who asked that question? Was that Danny? Yeah, good question. And then the same thing for a minor 2-5. I'll find a tune with minor 2-5s in a second here. Half diminished 7 is the minor 2-5. We'll look at that in a minute. But here we go. So this one is a different kind of use of 2-5. 2-5, the same 2-5 repeated, 2-5 repeated, 2-5. So this key signature is not E flat major. It's either A flat major or F minor. In this case, we can look at the last chord. Boop, F minor. So it looks like we're saying we actually do establish F minor here, right? So this is actually a 1-4, but it's a 2-5 progression. Interesting use of it, right? So he's kind of masking the tonality. It sounds like E flat major, E flat major, E flat major, but he's actually doing something a little bit different with it. One of the reasons Sammy Nesco was such a genius. But we can isolate this and call it a 2-5. It's definitely a 2-5. Totally different usage, but it's definitely a 2-5. And then a 2-5 here, 2-5, same 2-5 repeated. Okay. This is a very clever little tune. If we were going to do an analysis, this would be something more for advanced jazz improvisation, because using 2-5s in an unorthodox fashion, but they're definitely 2-5s. We can see that. Everybody see that they're 2-5s? Minor, B flat minor. Radar goes up. Is it a 2-5? Is there a dominant 7 following that chord that's a fourth away? Yep. B flat. E flat's a fourth away and it's a dominant. That's a 2-5. Okay. This isn't, now I want you to be careful here. I want you to understand what we're doing. What we're doing is identifying 2-5s. What we're not doing is thorough Roman numeral analysis of the music, right? We're just identifying 2-5s in the music. Okay, so there you go. Let's find a minor. Let me think here. There's got to be a minor ballad. Open up ballads. There's a bunch of, excuse me, there's a bunch of 2-5s at the beginning of Loverman. Similar situation here to what Sammy Nestico did. 2-5, 2-5, and then he goes up a step, or up a fourth, and there's a 2-5 in F. So 2-5 in C, 2-5 in F, G to C. Here's another 2-5 in G flat, A flat minor to D flat, and then right following it, 1 in F. So G to C. Lots of 2-5s. Here's a 2-5 right here in the minor key. Now this is at the end going at the end of a section to go back to the beginning. So what key do you think this is in? It's either F major or what? What's the relative minor for F major? Anyone?
D minor.
D minor. First chord is D minor. That's a decent clue. This is tricky. The last chord is F major. Oh man, what do I do? It could be either one. Well, here are two chords that take us back to the first chord, and that happens to be a 2-5 in D minor. So I would say at least the first half of this song is in D minor, even though it ends on F. This is a really tricky one. This Lover Man happens to be in both keys. It goes back and forth. But we've got evidence that it's in both keys. But here's a 2-5 in D minor. What's the first quality of a minor 2-5? A half diminished chord. The 2 chord is half diminished. We see that right there. D, the 2 chord is E, E half diminished. And then it's followed by a dominant 7 a fourth away. There's one. Let's find some more. Here's another one. The song is Skylark, very familiar tune. Okay, happens to be in F major. But in the middle of it, we've got this in the middle of this, what we call the bridge. We've got this 2-5-1 right here. We see the root movement. A, up a fourth to D, up a fourth to G. Half diminished. Radar goes up. Is this a 2-5 in a minor key? What's the next chord? It's a dominant 7 a fourth away, and then happens to solidifies it by going to a minor chord another fourth away. So 2 in the key of G minor, A half diminished, D7, G minor. There's a 2-5-1 in G minor. So we're in F major in the song, but for these 2 bars, we're in G minor. This is what makes jazz so interesting, is the more complex harmonic movement that occurs over a very simple melody. Da-da-da, da-da-da. Very simple melody. Okay.
So I thought you were also talking about having a minor 7th as a hint initially.
Yeah, minor 7th would be a clue that we're going to be maybe. Do we have a 2-5 in a major key? Yeah. Right. So like right here, G major, or I'm sorry, G minor. Is that a 2 chord? Well, there's a dominant 7 that follows it a fourth way, so it could be. It probably is. That's a 2-5, definitely. Is it major? Well, this goes back, so you have to think. You have to see the repeat sign. Go back to the first chord. 2-5-1 in F major. Yep. So that's a major 2-5. First clue, minor 7. That's not enough though. You got to continue. You got to complete the process, right? That's just the first clue. Is there a dominant 7 a fourth away from that? Yep. It's a 2-5. Half diminished 7. It could be a 2-5 in G minor. Is there a dominant 7 a half step away, or a fourth away? Sorry. Yep. There we go. It's G minor 2-5. Whether this chord occurs or not, that's still a G minor 2-5. Okay. Remember, again, I'm going to say this. We're not doing a thorough Roman numeral analysis. We're just identifying 2-5s randomly. And I'm saying that because when we get to common chord progressions, things will change a little bit, but it's still, for our purposes, this is a 2-5. We can prove it by the root movement and the quality of the chords. Are we all good with 2-5s? And I hope you're starting to see the importance of them. They show up all the time, right? Here's a 2-5. This one's a F major. Now here's an exception. This is still a 2-5, but we're going to a dominant chord. F7 has a major third. This is a half diminished. It looks like we're going to have a 2-5 and a minor. Normally, I would say that's a minor 2-5. This composer, Carl Fischer, getting creative. He uses it in a major quality, but it's still a minor 2-5 because it's got a half diminished 2 and then a dominant 5. All over the place, we see them. This one has a lot of chords in it. Really confusing to look at. There's a 2-5, 2. Oops, sorry. Stop it. Where was that? 2. There's a minor, followed by a 5, followed by a 1. E minor 7, A7, 1. 2, 5, 1 in D. They're in it. I mean, just about every tune. There's 2, 5, 1 in G. 2, 5, F sharp to B7 is an E major. This one happens to go to a different chord, but it's still a 2-5 by itself. So you can see how important this chord progression is. When we look at these songs, we see a lot of different chords scattered throughout, but almost everyone we've looked at has at least 1, 2, 5 in it somewhere. Yeah? Do y'all see that? It just happens a lot. So it's really the foundational chord progression for jazz. It's really important that we all understand it, how to build them, how to identify them, that kind of thing. All right, open the floor for questions before I close the book for today and we talk about the final. Anybody have questions about 2-5s in a minor or major key? How to build them, how to identify them? Okay, I encourage you to sit down at the piano. If you have a keyboard that you can get to somewhere, if you don't, you'll just have to, do this with your eyes. But if you can hear these and build them yourselves, I think it's really helpful to start to get this sound of this root movement. Get that root movement, that fourth root movement. So the 2-5 root movement is really important. That's what a major 2-5 sounds like. What key am I in? Oh yeah, sorry. That's what a minor 2-5 sounds like. So sitting down at the piano and working through some 2-5s, like play your major scale, figure out what's the 2 chord, figure out what the 5 chord is, then try to play them back to back, and then try to play the 1 after it. That I think it's really helpful to build your skills as a musician, but also to start to get that sound of a 2-5 progression into your ear, into your brain, so that you can identify it when you hear it, because it is so vital to this music. It's really the foundation. Okay. All right. If there are no questions about 2-5s, and again, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Let me double check your homework, make sure I didn't miss anything that's going to confuse you all. All right, so on the homework, I've got you building 2-5s in either a major or a minor key. I've given you the key signature. So you really don't have to write accidentals if you don't want to, just to keep it clean. I just want you to be able to figure out what is the 2 chord, what is the 5 chord. You don't have to put a 1 after it, just the 2-5 in that given major. So the first one is G major. Build a 2-5 in G major. So what is the 2 chord? Anybody? What's the 2 chord in G major?
Sorry, I had trouble hearing you on that. What were you saying about the first one?
Yeah, so the first one is build the 2 chord in G major. And I've given you the key signature. So what is the 2 chord in G major? Anybody?
A minor 7.
A minor 7. So you would just write an A minor 7 half note chord, and then after that, the 5 chord in G major is D7, D, F sharp, A, C. Just write that after a half note after that. So in half notes would be, if you write whole, it doesn't matter what the rhythm is. I don't really care. I just want to see that you know how to find a 2-5 in a major or minor key. how to think about it. What is the 2 chord? What is the 5 chord? And then at the bottom, I've given you the 2 5s, and you have to identify them. Let me see, just make sure. Okay, so I did include so 3 of these are minor 2 5s that have an augmented 7. So you probably will figure it out if you see a sharp that's in a flat key, or a natural that's in a flat key, or whatever, or an extra sharp. But so you're going to need to be able to identify the augmented chord and notate that as well. So it would be a half diminished 2 5 with an augmented 7 if it occurs. So I want to see that as well. We did talk about that option for a minor 2 5. Everybody remember that? The augmented 7 as a dominant 7. That's important to be able to identify. Okay. All right. So that's the homework. Just building and identifying 2 5s. And I think that'll be pretty self-explanatory. Okay, let me open the final. So the final is going to it has 2 parts. Here we go. So part 1 is going to be just answering some questions about a jazz standard. Here's what it looks like. This is in your assignment. So if you want to start, whenever you want to start on it, you can. I'd like you to identify the key for the song. And then there is some Roman numeral analysis for part of it. This you're not, for measures 1 through 8. You're not going to be able to do this yet completely because we haven't talked about this yet. When we do common chord progressions tomorrow, this will become more clear. But so identify, so you're going to have to kind of go through here, find the little things kind of inserted throughout the music. Name a chord, name the chord progression and tonal center in these 3 bars, all that kind of stuff. Build each chord in root position from measure 12 to the end of the tune. There is one thing here. This D augmented 7 occurs here, occurs here, occurs here. Just once is fine. Okay. I want to know that you know how to build that chord. You don't have to do it all 3 times. So if a chord repeats itself in those 16 measures, you can just do it the first time that it occurs, and then that's fine after that. Is that clear? Does that make sense? This one is number 26 here. What is a function of this chord right here? You won't know that until tomorrow when we talk about common chord progressions. If you do know it now, great. That's great. Okay, so that's the first part. And then part 2 is, it goes with this one. And it's just answering more questions about the music. So you're going to need this to refer to part 2. Name the chord progression in these measures. And then just like we did on the homework yesterday and the quiz today, construct and name just one scale as source material for some given chords. And then there are a couple bonus points at the bottom. Is that cool? Any questions about the final? So I'd like you to turn the final in before Friday morning. Friday morning, we'll review the final, and then we'll maybe do some, I'll just have some Q&A time, and we'll maybe listen to a few more tunes. Starting tomorrow, we're going to listen to more music as we do chord progressions. We'll listen to examples off of Spotify. Off of Spotify. And I'll show you the lead sheet with it so you can see and hear the chord progressions as we go. Okay. Is that? Oh, and then we'll do a little bit of modal music, I think, on, let me see. Today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. No, we'll be done with modal music. Okay. So then we'll that'll be it. So Friday will be a relatively easy day. It'll be reviewing the final, general Q&A, listening to a few examples of some things in jazz. Maybe talk about a couple of things that we're not able to get to in the class for those of you who are interested. So questions about the final? It can be a work in progress. You can start on it anytime. It's up there and available. I think I made it available starting today through Friday. So it's there. And same kind of deal, just upload it as an assignment. I hope I made an assignment for it. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. Okay. Are we all good? All right. Very short class today. I hope that's okay to start your Monday with a. I don't want to give you any more information than that, though, because I want you to focus in on this 2-5. And that'll be the 2-5 progressions are going to lay the foundation for what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We'll see a lot of 2-5s occurring in the Common Core progressions, but we're going to call them something different. So it's important to at least have this point of departure. All right. I'll stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. If not, we'll see you. Have a great afternoon and evening. Get those finals in, and if you haven't turned in your homework, please do that as well. Okay. All right. See ya.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple things, Mike.
Okay, Satya.
Just want to say I can turn in all that homework and stuff and quiz from today. I'll get on that. And but one question is just what do you mean by tonal center? I think I missed that somewhere.
Yeah, so when I say a tonal center, what I mean is chords, when we group them together, they tend to point to either a major tonality, a major key sound, or a minor key sound. So when I say a tonal center, we use that term instead let me open that song again. I shouldn't have been so quick to close everything. Okay.
Lauren, if you have a quicker question, go for it.
Well, let me answer that one real quick. Okay.
I think I probably have a couple long questions.
Okay. So we can see here, actually, here's a good one. We can see in this song, this has a lot of chords in sequence we haven't talked about. Some of them, these relationships we won't get to either. But let's look at these two bars right here. These two chord, this 2-5 and this 2-5 are in keys that are really far apart from each other. So this is a 2-5 in A flat. It's a flat key. This is a 2-5 in D major. It's a sharp key. They don't really have a relationship that is immediately apparent. But what I'm not doing is I'm not changing keys for one measure, right? I'm not going to a different key all of a sudden and then go to another key here. But I am hinting at a tonality right here, right? So this kind of hints at a different tonal center. Maybe the key of A flat, maybe an A flat tonality, either major or minor. And this one is hinting at a D tonality, either D major or D minor. So when I say tonal center, I mean that like this bar is in the tonal center of some kind of an A flat. Yeah, it just kind of shifts, right? It moves around a lot, shifting here. This bar, here's a half diminished 7. Radar goes up. 2 chord, 2-5-1 in F, some kind of F. It's kind of hinting at an F tonality, a tonal center of F of some kind, and it does go there. But then all of a sudden, we're at a dominant. So now maybe it's a different tonality. So I don't want to be saying I'm changing keys every measure because it just doesn't do that. But we do have different tonal centers that it kind of moves around, shifting around. Still, so the overall thing is the overall tune is still in the key of E flat major, but it does shift to different tonal centers from time to time. But overall, everything kind of meanders and makes its way back. Eventually, there's a 5-1 in E flat. So I'm not in a different key. I'm just hinting at a tonal center that's different. There you go.
Okay. And if you just saw that B flat minor and the E flat 7, would you say that that's A flat major or minor?
Well, I probably would initially say that's a 2-5 and A flat A flat major, because what is the two? This is a 2 chord. Is it minor or is it half diminished? If it's a minor 7, chances are good it's a major 2-5. If it's a half diminished 7, chances are good it's a minor 2-5. Because remember, the 2 chord in a minor key center is half diminished. A 2 chord in a major key is minor.
And you're saying it's half diminished because it's got the flat 5, right?
Exactly.
And the minor 7
has a perfect 5.
Right. Yep. Okay.
All right. Lauren,
Cool.
do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about two questions. One about the final.
Yeah.
So are we analyzing the first 4 measures or so in B flat major instead of G minor? I don't know if you can tell me that.
I can. Remember I said you're not ready to do this yet?
Uh-huh.
Because we haven't done this. Tomorrow when we do common chord progressions, we're going to talk about this.
Okay.
And I'll make sure I go over this. If we don't get to a song that has this exact chord progression, although I can tell you we will, because we're going to get to this exact song. So these bonus points at the end are going to be pretty apparent if you're paying attention. I just want to see if people are paying attention. Okay. It's hard to tell through Zoom sometimes. So right now you can't. We can look at it and just say, well, there's a 2-5. But in reality, in the overall scheme of this song, it's actually, Satya, don't get confused by this. It's not a 2-5. Remember, I emphasized several times, we're not doing Roman numeral analysis. We're just randomly identifying 2-5s. So at first glance, it appears to be a 2-5 because it's a 2-5-1 here. What we want to do when we do Roman numeral analysis is identify the key first and then try to justify every chord in that key using a Roman numeral. That means sometimes we have to alter the quality of those chords. All right. In this case, we don't. I'll tell you right up front, this is a minor. This is a 4 minor 7. This is a 7 dominant 7. This is a 3 major 7. This is a 4. This is a 6 major 7. See what I'm doing here? Because we've established the key is G minor.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting answers for the test here, Satya. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. I was just like confused when we started looking at it. I was like,
Yeah. And I knew that was going to be a little bit confusing. Remember, the exercise today is just to start to identify 2-5s, be able to pick those out of randomly out of nowhere. But when we do a thorough Roman numeral analysis, if we know this is in G minor, the song, which we can establish, then we know that cannot be a 2.
Mm-hmm.
If we're because it's the 2 for G minor is A half diminished. So we have to come up with some other way to justify that. But if I were to say, can you find a 2-5 in B flat major in this song? Well, yeah, it's right there. I can just call that a 2-5 out of context, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can see we use 2-5s to build different elements, to build songs, and then all of a sudden they don't become a 2-5 anymore. But when I extract it, it is a 2-5. So 2-5 are like the bricks that we build a building with.
Does it since they're like, I guess or they're like relative major and minor, does like the 4 minor 7 and then the 7, what is it? The 7, 7
dominant.
half diminished. Does that function similarly in any way to a 2-5?
Yeah, because the root movement would be the same.
Okay.
Right. But what the elements of a 2-5, it has to have a minor or half diminished 2-5 and a dominant 5, a dominant quality. So if this were F sharp half diminished 7, like the 7 of G minor, then it wouldn't be a 2-5 anymore. It would just be chords in the key of G minor. Does that make sense? Because what part of what makes a 2-5 is that there is actually a 5-7. There's a dominant 7 chord in it, in that progression. That has to occur, and that occurs in both a major 2-5 right here and in a minor 2-5. We always have a dominant 7 in there to make it a 2-5. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Good question. Getting ahead of the class a little bit, but that's fine. Yeah.
Satya, I don't know if you had another question. I know I have a more arbitrary question.
No, I didn't. I was just snooping, but I'm gonna bounce.
No
okay.
problem.
See you, Satya.
Cool. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Bye. You were talking about, because I was struggling with ways to come up on the homework yesterday, the number 1 and number 3.
Yeah.
And you were starting to say, because it was taking me a while because I would have to look at all the intervals between the whole scale. But you started saying something about there's a major third and a major, was it 6th or 7th?
7th, yeah. So here's a question that maybe will help you clarify. What are the chord tones that determine the quality of a 7th chord?
The 7th, it would be, sorry, it always takes me a second.
That's
I'm not very fast at theory.
Actually, we can make it even simpler. What is the chord tone that determines the quality of a triad? What makes a triad either major or minor?
The quality between the root and the third, and then the third and the fifth. I'm not sure.
It's actually the third. So let's think about a C major chord has an E in it, a C major triad. A C minor chord has an E flat for the third.
Okay.
So the quality of the third really is probably the most important chord note in a chord. Especially if we're talking about triads. Now, of course, if we lower the fifth, that changes it to diminished. But, we said earlier that diminished chords kind of belong in the minor family. Remember, we talked about that? Okay. So that could, because the minor third is still there. And then when we talk about 7th chords, the 7th also helps to determine the quality, because a major third in a 7th chord could be a major 7, or it could be a dominant 7, because both of those have a major third, right? So C major 7 has C, E, G, B natural. C7 has C, E, G, still has the E, so the third is the same. But the 7th is different. It's a B flat. So in a 7th chord, the 2 chord tones that determine the tonality are the 3rd and the 7th.
Okay.
What is the quality of the 3rd? Is it a major or minor? That gives you your first clue. If it's major, okay, then this 7th chord is either going to be a major 7th or a dominant 7th. So what is the quality of the 7th? It's a minor 7th. So this is a dominant 7th. It has a major 3rd and a minor 7th. I've been saying that a lot. So that, with that in mind, does that make sense?
Yeah. So if it's a major third and a major third, minor 7th, it's a dominant 7th.
Correct. And so with that in mind, we can do the same thing with scales. That's the reason I took you that path. So let's look at the diminished scale, right? Oh, let me share it with you. Oh yeah, you can still see, right? I'm still sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the diminished scale. First thing we need to figure out, what is the quality of the third? G, A, B flat. There's the third in the scale. Is it a major third above G, or is it a minor third?
Minor.
So it's a minor. So this is either going to be a minor. So this is going to be a minor quality scale, more likely than not. We can keep going. It has the 7th is major. This is weird. It's awkward. So that doesn't help me. Okay, it's probably minor, because we can have a minor major 7, right? We talked about that. This one happens to have a flat 5 too, if we really dig in. So this is a diminished G. So minor third, and then G, the root up to the 5th is diminished 5th. So that's a diminished. So we know this is a minor quality scale. Well, we know right away because the third is minor. Okay. The trickier ones are distinguishing between major and dominant. So now this diminished scale starting on a half step is especially tricky because it has a minor third and a major third above the root.
Yeah.
All right. But we can also think of this is getting more advanced. I just told you all it's a dominant type, but we can call this A sharp because this is really flat 9, sharp 9 when we put it on a chord, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the third of the chord is a major third. So it's some kind of a major quality chord. It's either major 7 or dominant 7. So to figure that out, we have to find the 7th. There it is. Is it major or minor?
From G to F.
Mm-hmm.
It's a step away, so it's major?
It's minor.
Minor.
So yeah,
okay.
a half step would be below the root, would be major. A whole step below the root, or 2 half steps. F sharp, F is 2 half steps. So that would be a minor 7th. Or the technically correct way to think about it is 10 half steps above the root because we're ascending to the interval. So it's got a major third and a minor 7th above the root. So it's a dominant type scale. Right?
Okay.
So we don't have to know off the top of our head, although ultimately I'd like you to know that the inverted diminished scale is a dominant scale. We can just look at the scale tones and figure it out. Major third, minor 7th, dominant. Here's the major scale. This is obvious, but it's got a major third and a major 7th. It's a major type scale.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on this page, but so there's the modes. Oh, here we go. Modes. The Mixolydian scale. I said it's also called a dominant scale, so that helps. But the Mixolydian mode has a major third above the root, G to B, and a minor 7th above the root. So it's a dominant scale. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
The Aeolian mode, minor third above the root, A to C. So minor third, minor 7th. That's a minor. It's got a minor third. We can just kind of stop. It's a minor. It's a minor scale. Does that make sense?
So, sorry, going back to the Aeolian really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess I'm just like picturing like the chords like stacked.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're focusing on A, C, and G, the root, the third, and the 7th, right?
Yep.
And you said like those intervals were both minor, right?
Yes. So the C is a minor third above the root, or 3 half steps, and then the G is 10 half steps above the root, or a minor 7th. Or we can think of it backwards, like you did. You were talking about 2 half steps below the root, A, G sharp, G natural. So it's 2
So then,
steps.
how do we distinguish that, or like that minor from diminished? Like, what's different between the two?
The 5th.
The 5th. Okay.
So remember we said the 5th, the quality of the 5th determines whether it's diminished or minor, or augmented. Could be augmented too. In order to be augmented, it has to have a major third. But in this case, we could lower the 5th. So E is a perfect 5th above the root. So remember, what makes a triad minor is it has a minor third above the root and a perfect 5th above the root. So take this note out for a second. All right? So when we talk about 7th chords, we don't generally talk about the 5th. We don't label it unless it's altered somehow, make it augmented or diminished, that kind of thing. When we talk about a triad, we do talk about that. So we say it's a minor quality because we identify both the 3rd and the 5th, the quality of those. So this is a perfect 5th above the root with a minor 3rd above the root. If I make that a diminished 5th, lower it a half step, now it's a diminished triad because it has a diminished triad has 2 minor thirds, right? A minor third above the root, and then another minor third on top of that, or a diminished 5th between the root and the 5th. So that would be a diminished triad. And then if I'm going to add the 7th, now it's half diminished because half diminished means a minor 7.
So if you're looking at like say like we're doing the same process that we have been, we looked at the root, the 3rd, and the 7th, and both those intervals are minor, then to tell whether it's diminished or minor, you have to look at the 5th.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So what makes a chord diminished or augmented is the quality of the 5th.
Okay.
If we don't call it flat 5 or diminished or augmented, then we make the assumption that the 5th is perfect.
Okay. So if it was E sharp instead of E flat, would it be augmented?
No, almost. But in order to have an augmented chord, what do we have to have? We have an augmented 5th. That's half of it. But we also have to have a major 3rd.
Okay.
Remember when we did triad qualities, we talked about, so the intervals for an augmented triad are a major 3rd on top of a major 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that would be augmented right there. Yeah, so augmented is, the augmented triad belongs to the major family because it has a major 3rd. Okay.
Okay.
And then when we talk about 7th chords, most of the time it belongs to the dominant family because more times than not, an augmented 7th will have a minor 7th in it. Major 3rd, minor 7th. So So that's how to determine the family, right? We really only had we had 3 families. We had a diminished, but the diminished belongs to the minor. It's kind of a subcategory. Actually, we talked about it. It could be a dominant too. So diminished is kind of funny. But the 2 families are major or minor, right? The 2 kind of general categories of chords. So we figure that out first by looking at the 3rd. Is the 3rd major above the root or is it minor above the root? There's most of your answer right there.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then of course dominants they're sort of related to major because they have a major 3rd, but the 7th is different. Lot to know. A lot of information. I know this is like drinking from a fire hose, so I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the class, but this is normally a whole semester course, and we're doing it in 9 days. So yeah, it's a lot coming at you really fast. We would normally spend a lot more time processing this information, and we just don't have time.
Friday was like, oh my gosh, I'm like barely holding up. But like today I was like, oh yeah, it's fine.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully it'll make more sense as we go. And it's hard to know when you cram a semester course into 9 days. It's hard to know what not to include. Because I know I can't imagine. It's just so much. Yeah. So, but you're doing great. Hang in there.
Okay.
Any more questions for me?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, cool. See you, Lauren.
All right, bye.
Bye.